You're listening to The Money Hour with your host, Tina Mitchell, and co-host Keelan Harvey on Alternative Talk AM 1150. Now, back to the show with local mortgage experts Tina Mitchell and Keelan Harvey.
Welcome back to The Money Hour on 1150 AM KKNW, the Saturday, April 13th show. I am your host, Tina Mitchell. I got it. I'm your host, Tina Mitchell.
I'm your co-host, Keelan Harvey.
You're local mortgage experts. It is a great day to talk about money, and that's what the show is all about. How to make money, how to save money so that you can have a better quality of life for you and your family. If you're hearing our show at a different time, you are listening to a rebroadcast, but we're here to connect you with the guest, answer any questions that you may have. You can call the show at 1-855-400-1150. Again, that's 1-855-400-1150 or online at themoneyhour.com. In studio right now, our regular contributor, John Wilson of King County Department of Assessments. He is our King County assessor. And John's going to be talking about property taxes and home housing crisis. John, thank you so much for joining us back in studio.
Great to see you, Tina and Keelan.
Yeah, and a little bit about John. King County Assessor John Wilson, elected in 2015, assumes office having earned the praise of people both inside and outside King County as one of the most innovative, forward-thinking managers of local government. Wilson served as Chief Deputy Assessor for 4 years. His work gained a reputation for savvy development of mobile technology and public-facing solutions that enhance customer service while driving down cost, which is always a good thing over at the assessor's office. During his tenure, he rebuilt the department's website, increasing traffic tenfold to nearly 4 million page views a month. Wilson led a team that developed the best-in-class mobile iPad application for the field data collection that annually saves hundreds of thousands of dollars in avoided cost. And he spearheaded King County launching an online property tax appeal platform that, after 2 years, is handling close to 60% of all appeals filed.
Thanks again, John, for joining us. And I'm sure there's some listeners out there that are trying to figure out what exactly your office does. Can you clarify a little bit on what you guys are tasked to do and what it's all about?
Sure. By state law, what the county assessor does is the assessor sets the property value on all commercial and residential properties in the county. So in the case of King County, that covers about 720,000 pieces of property. This building, your house, publicly owned buildings and all that. And then we also administer various programs that provide different categories of potential property tax relief for farmlands, for low-income seniors, for a variety of other special case uses, historic preservation.
So, John, property taxes went up sharply in 2018, but stayed relatively flat or even dropped a bit in many parts of King County this year. Why is that?
Well, the big thing was the so-called McCleary decision from the state Supreme Court, where the legislature basically hit King County in particular with a walloping increase. We last year raised property taxes by just under 17% across the county, the largest.
Yeah, my taxes went up very high.
Don't blame me.
Oh, I definitely not. No, definitely. I was actually having a conversation about that earlier. That it's not your fault.
Thank you, Tina.
You're welcome.
But the fact was, it was the largest single increase we've ever had. This year, the formula for McCleary changes, and so what that's meant is generally taxes have been relatively flat. We've had some communities, for example, Mercer Island, property taxes actually went down. Bellevue, they went up a little bit, but about half of what they'd done a year before. At the same time, values have continued to go up, although we're seeing some changes in the real estate market as well.
Yeah.
I was talking, John, to my dad, shout out to my pops, and he said the assessor drove by. Oh, gosh, the value of our home. We've done some improvements, and he's freaking out. I don't know if it's come to fruition yet, whatever that might have meant. But they're under the impression that their property value is specifically related to improvements of the home or the value of the home in general. Can you clarify or talk about a little bit more about what actually determines the property taxes for a home?
Sure. So first, tell your dad to take a deep breath.
Good.
He'll be okay. Remodeling can affect your property value, but a lot of it depends on what you do. Mm-hmm. You know, if you're simply drywalling the basement, probably not quite so much, although that adds some usable space. But if you've put $50,000 in a new kitchen or a spa-like bath off the master suite, that can have an impact on your overall value. As just as you guys both know, it has an impact on your ability to command top dollar for it when you sell it.
Yeah.
So what we do is two things. By state law, once every 6 years, we're to physically inspect a property. That literally means we come out to the site. We'll usually knock on the door, introduce ourselves and that. We'll ask if there's been any major changes for that. We also obviously track what's happening with permitting in that. So if we have a permit that shows that there's been some significant remodel, we may ask even if we can step inside. We'll always talk to the taxpayer first. So those are the kind of things. People sometimes think, though, it's merely square footage or how many bedrooms I have in that. That's a factor, but it tends not to be the driving factor. It's those big kind of amenity hooks in a house that will tend to drive the value of a gourmet cook's kitchen, a really luxury ensuite, some kind of above the norm landscaping or that. Those kind of things can have an impact.
So, John, don't come back to our house. My husband caught our kitchen on fire, and we've got a definitely an upgrade gourmet kitchen. But hush, that's just between you and me and our listeners. Heard nothing. Well, and talk about levies, too, because isn't it like around 46% of your taxes are actually based on the assessed of the property, but then you have all the levies and things that you're voting for as well?
Absolutely, Tina. And to come back to the earlier question, last year's big spike, 2/3 of that was because of what the state legislature did as far as education funding. But you do have roughly that 46% that's driven by what you and I vote on.
Yes.
So one of the things we did last year for the first time is we launched what's called the Taxpayer Transparency Tool. And it gives people a chance to literally go to their property, and if there's a ballot measure coming up, like there are some later this month in the county, you can click and see, okay, what would that mean for my property taxes if I vote for that? And then you can see also the full stack of what am I paying on my property tax bill? Because folks often make the assumption because it comes from King County that King County is getting all the money. I wish, but that ain't the case.
Yeah.
And the fact is, King County itself only gets about 18 cents on the dollar. The bulk of it goes to public education, but then you have some that goes to roads, to sound transit,
Parks.
fire districts, a variety of things that we all count on.
So, John, I know it's really important for you and the exemptions and really helping the low income, especially the seniors, be able to afford to stay in their home. And property taxes can sometimes prevent that from happening. So how are the efforts going in continuing to make that even more affordable with those exemptions for our seniors?
So thanks for asking, Tina. There are two tracks we're going on right now. Since I took office, we've mounted a very aggressive effort to recruit seniors who might not have known about the program to be able to apply. Right now, the present law is that you have to be an owner-occupant, 61 and older, and have a household income of $40,000 a year. Now, for many folks in King County, that $40,000 threshold is frankly just too low.
Yes.
So there's legislation we've been working on with AARP and others that is working through the legislature. It is now passed both chambers, but it's caught in the budget negotiations, that would actually index that economic threshold by each county's average median income. So here in King County, that would take that 40,000 level up to almost 60,000.
Oh my gosh, that
and
is
about
awesome.
double the number of people. Because part of the things that we find is you have seniors that bought their home like in the 70s or so.
Yeah.
They maybe spent...
It wasn't Bellevue at that time.
Right.
I mean, like today's Bellevue.
Absolutely. And they spent maybe $40,000 for that 1,200 square foot home that did happen to have a view of the lake or something. And now that house is worth $1.3 million, $1.5 million.
Yeah, which is going to be at least $13,000, maybe $15,000 a year.
Right. So we have to do something, I think, to try to figure out how we can provide those people some relief so they're not getting taxed out of their homes.
John, this is exciting stuff for our listeners. Can you tell us some other exciting news as far as regarding property taxes and legislature and some of the other things that you're doing at this point?
Well, one of the little things that has already gotten through both chambers and is awaiting the governor's signature is what we call a manifest error correction. So if there's some kind of fundamental error we found or you found in your property, it used to be historically that if it went back more than 3 years, you had to file a separate pleading for each year thereafter. And we said, that's ridiculous. Why not, if you found it and we validated it, why don't we just consider it one filing and we'll just do it in a group? It just seemed simple, good government. And we were lucky that passed overwhelmingly through both chambers of the legislature and now awaits for Governor Inslee's signature.
Fantastic. That's great.
Yeah. So, John, obviously a big crisis that we're having here is the homeless issues. And it's a really big issue facing the Puget Sound region. What is the cause for the crisis, and what's your opinion on this?
Well, there's clearly a lot of causes, some of them social causes, drug and alcohol dependencies and that. Some of it is the cost of housing. Some of it is scarcity of housing. So, part of what we've been working on and trying to stay in our swim lane is we're the keeper of the property records for every piece of property in the county, whether it's publicly owned or privately owned. And what we know, and what I know from my experience in county government, is oftentimes there are pieces of property that government agencies buy when they're building big projects, such as what Sound Transit's doing right now, that then are used for staging in that during the project, but afterwards they sit silent, surplus.
Wow.
And so we said, why can't those be used for housing in cases? So we've identified in both the city of Seattle and around King County literally hundreds of these projects, or properties rather, that are owned by the state, the county, and others that we think could be used for housing.
So are you connecting with the nonprofit organizations to, work through that process?
Yeah, we're working with nonprofits. We're working with the local governments. We're trying to share it far and wide. We helped a nonprofit agency build a mapping tool that shows people where those properties are.
Wow, that's so exciting.
Well, John, I know you're super active in that area, specifically as part of the County Executors One Table process to develop options and address this issue. And I know you were a super vocal advocate for sitting modular housing on this surplus of government property. And where does this effort sit at this point? Where does it stand today? Where are you going to see it's going to go in our future here?
So there's some efforts already underway. It's really interesting. There's some modular projects right now that are going in the ground, or on the ground as the case may be, both in Edmonds and Auburn. Part of the Edmonds project is already open. Auburn opens a little bit later this year. Part of what we did, Keelan, is we identified about 24 sites in the city of Seattle, again, these publicly owned sites. And on a couple of them, what we did is we ran hard numbers so you could get an idea. I'll give you a quick one. Up on Capitol Hill, we found a site about 10,000 square feet. We wanted to see if we could house roughly 60 people. We figured out that a stick-built building would probably cost about $21 to $25 million and take 5 or more years. We then went to a modular provider and said, what could you do? They said, we can house the 60 people, have on-site services for them, and we can do the total installation on the ground for $6.9 million.
Wow.
Roughly a third of that. So what we're trying to do is work with the city and others now to find funding for that kind of stuff to move forward. We're right now working, hopefully, to get Sound Transit on some of those surplus properties they have along the existing rail right-of-way that could be used for housing. So it's very exciting, and we think it offers an opportunity for us to start to build housing somewhat at a scale that we really need.
Yeah, I love your creativity and everything that you're bringing into the assessor office, and so thank you for that, John. We've got a minute left to wrap up before we head to commercial, and I know that you've been really outspoken about the need for modernizing our tax system in order to reduce reliance on property taxes. So quickly, what's the progress that you've been able to make in this area?
We're making some headway. It's slow. One of the things that's starting to catch on and getting some interest, and we were hoping to introduce legislation this session. It just didn't quite pan out. But next year, we are hoping to have something called what's called a homestead exemption. 34 states around the United States have that. Basically, what it does is it takes off the top a certain percentage or dollar value of your assessed value to reduce your property taxes. And we think this could be a huge help for homeowners and that allows them to either buy a little bit more house or pay a little bit less in property taxes and helps them fulfill that American dream of home ownership.
Yeah, that's so wonderful. John, thank you again for coming in and joining us.
Thank you.
I look forward to having you back. And coming up in the Money Hour, wealth is attained through teamwork. Noemi Chaparro of Securian Advisors Northwest. Right here at 1150 AM, KKNW, after this short break.